In this next segment, we're going to talk about working with layers, but it's always good as a reminder to remember to stop and save your work. So let's go up to the File menu, choose Save, tell After Effects where we would like to save our file. We're going to give it a name and click Save. Now notice now that we have saved our project that the name of our file appears up in the title bar as opposed to the generic name that Adobe gave it before it was saved. So being that After Effects is really a layer-based program, we're going to examine working with layers and the different things you can do with them within a project. First thing we need to do is get some media material in here. So again, we right-click, Import, File, and we are going to select Hole-in-One and our dancers again. Remember, I can select multiple files by holding down my Control key and clicking on the ones I want before I hit Open. And as you can see, here is our media. Now, what we'd like to do is create a new composition. As you can see here, we have no composition going. Notice what happened here in our project window. Not only do we see our videos that we imported, we see a composition item listed as well. And the composition has taken the name of the media that we chose to insert. Another way to create a composition would be to point at your media and click and drag it down here to this icon. This is your Create Composition icon. And if I let go, notice now I have Composition Multi-Dancers. Here in my project window, I have 2 compositions as well as my 2 media files. And down here in my project work area, you'll notice I have tabs for 2 different compositions. Now, what I'm going to do is close the multi-dancer composition. And I'm going to remove it from my project window. And it's asking me, are you sure you want to do that? And I'm going to say, yeah, delete it. Now we have only one composition. Now suppose I would like a composition made up of multiple media. I'm going to click and drag that media right on top of the one already in my composition and let go. Now you'll notice that I have 2 pieces of media within my one composition. And you could certainly add multiple others as well. So that we can get the idea of working with multiple layers, I'm going to keep it simple and we'll work with just the 2 layers. Now looking up here in our time control box, if we want to move to the beginning, very start of the composition, we would click on the first frame. Or if we were down here within our project work area, we could also hit the Home key on our keyboard. To get to the very end of the composition, we would hit the End, E-N-D key. The equivalent of the End key here in the time control would be this icon right here. So we're going to go right ahead to the very beginning from the start. Now let's take a look at the parts of our work area. Right here, towards the top, you can see a little toolbar. These are items that, if you were to select them, would affect your entire composition, every layer that's in it. But what if I would like to deal individually with my layers? Well, we certainly can do that by going down here to each individual item in the list. Now here you can see this bar. It's kind of a title area explaining what the different things are that we have listed here. So for example, the source name, this file is called Multi-Dancers, this one is called Hole-in-One. So anything that we were to choose, say for example here we would like to mute any audio associated with this video if there were any, we would then put a check in the box. Now being there is no audio associated with it, that doesn't work here. This is your solo button, and that allows you to hide all non-solo video. So if I decide I want to only see this layer, I make sure there's a check in the solo button, and so that nothing else in my project will show other than what I have selected as a solo piece. And I just click again to remove it. Now suppose I have a layer that I absolutely, positively want to be sure does not get touched or edited in any way. Well, then you see the little lock here. That's your lock icon option. You would just click in the box, and now this one will remain as it is unless you go and take the lock out of the box. Now here you see a little arrow. That arrow indicates there's a drop-down menu there, and I'm going to click on it. Now, as you see, we've been given another level of things that we can do to our layer of multi-dancers. And also, as you can see, there's another little drop-down arrow. Click on that, and we have a whole bunch of options. Now, any changes we make here will only affect this layer. So you can cascade or remove your list simply by clicking on this little drop-down arrow. Now, let's take a look. We have a number of different options here that would allow us to affect the appearance and performance of our media file, this layer. You see the little hourglasses here in front? I'm going to go ahead and click on the first one for anchor point. Please watch my mouse as I put it over the numbers. Do you see how it becomes a resizing arrow, a double arrow? If I click and drag, I can change my anchor point. The anchor point is this little button here in the middle of your piece. And now by changing my anchor point, you'll notice that I moved it downward. Now please note over here in your timeline that the line I made the choice on for anchor point, an icon has been added, which is called a keyframe. And this is very important because I can click and drag a keyframe anywhere within my timeline to indicate where I would like that change to occur. And I'm going to click and drag my time indicator there as well. And so now going back to the beginning, if we play it, we have shortened the time of our video and we have the loop feature on, and it just keeps going back to the beginning. So we've made it a lot shorter. Now going up here in your composition window, you can still click and drag and manually move things around. So you can change your position here in your work area, or you can manually drag it whichever way you'd like. Now I'm going to click the little hourglass here for scale. And we can click and drag and change the scale, the size of our video. Now just a word about these numbers that we're using. We've been clicking and dragging to make them larger or smaller, but if you have a precise number that you would like to use, you can simply click on the area and then type in manually what you would like it to be and hit enter on your keyboard, and it will do it that way. It's a bit more precise if you know precisely what you would like. Now notice the keyframes that are appearing, these little triangles on each item that we've edited. You can click and drag your keyframes to appear anywhere in your video. If you point at a keyframe and right-click on it, notice that you have certain options available to you. Summer effects, you can also specifically edit a value of your keyframe. Now I'm going to click the little hourglass under rotation. And once again, you see we can click and drag and change the location or rotation of our item. And the opacity, we're going to lower that a bit. So see, now you can see our next layer working right through the dancers. Now you can also add special effects to your layers by pointing and right-clicking on the layer name. So for example, you can see you have a number of different effects that you can choose from to apply to that particular layer. Now, let's go ahead and we'll close this stack, and I'm going to pull in another piece of media. Right-click, import a file, and how about our beating heart? And here it is. And we're going to go ahead and add it to our current composition right at the bottom. Now, the reason I've added this third layer was so that I could take a moment and discuss parent and child relationships within layers. You may have noticed here, under the parent category, this funny little squiggle symbol. If you want to create a parent-child relationship, simply point to the little squiggle and click and drag right on the layer name you want related. Now notice here, you have a list showing you what you are related to. You can also choose to remove all relationships. Now, what's the point of having a parent-child relationship between layers? Well, quite simply, any layer that you have a relationship between, any changes that you make to the parent layer will also automatically be affected to any child layers. Another interesting thing to note is that the layers can be reordered at any time. So if I want this one to be on top, I simply click and drag it. And you have all the flexibility there that you need. Also, here's another keyboard shortcut for you. Rather than use the mouse to click on the arrow to expand your list of options, on your keyboard you can hit the letter U, and it will expand and show you your different options, or turn them off. Now, if you would like, you can also include a solid layer. Point down in your work area, right-click, choose New. You can choose from all sorts of different things. You could choose a text layer or a solid. And here you can name your layer, decide the size, the aspect ratio, the color. Say OK. And you can treat this layer the same as your other layers, changing the opacity, rotation, and so forth. Let's start a new project. We won't save these changes. So let's go ahead and bring in a new file. And we're going to click and drag it down here to our New Comp button. Now let's go ahead and run it so you can see what we're dealing with. Now this begins rather abruptly. What if we would like to have it fade in? Let's click on our drop-down menus and look at our different effects. We want to make sure we're starting right here at the beginning. We click our stopwatch, which creates an anchor point. Now you can see the anchor point right here. The anchor point is central to your video. All of your effects work around your anchor point. And once we click on that, we have a keyframe. And now I'm going to move down here to the opacity. I'm going to click on the stopwatch for my opacity. And I'm right here at the beginning of our video. And I'm going to move it all the way down to 0. Next, I'm going to move my time indicator up here to about a second. And move my opacity back up to 100%. Now let's move to the beginning and click play. And as you can see, we've created a lovely soft fade-in effect, much nicer than the abrupt beginning we had before. Now, if I should change my mind and I'd like to remove all of these changes that I just made, I'll just click on the stopwatch again by the effect, and as you can see, it removes everything. Now, suppose I'd like to create a position animation. Let's make sure we're back at the very beginning and click on Position on our little hourglass. Now I'm going to move my time frame up a bit, go up to my anchor point, and click and drag. And now, as you can see, we've created a motion path. Now, it's a little difficult here because of the size of the work area and the size of the window to really drag in the composition area as we'd like to. So we can fix that. The quick way is on your computer keyboard. I can hit the tilde key. That's the little key with the squiggly on it to the left of the number 1 on your computer keyboard. And this allows me to see my composition window in a full frame without all of the other panels around. So we have a lot more flexibility as far as moving things in and out the way we'd like. Hit the tilde key again, and you're back to where you were. So now if we use our time control to make sure we're back at the beginning and then hit play, as you can see, we've created an animation. Now, another option we would have had here when trying to move and create that motion path with this panel would have been to change the size of our screen view. As you can see right now, we have it magnified to fit up to 100%, but we could move down to 50%, and as you can see, we have a lot more room to play with.